Hello everybody, welcome back to Access Blockbusters Pod, episode number 92. Thank you all so much for joining us this week. Just to be upfront with you guys, just to keep the intro as short as I possibly can before we dive into this week's topics, this episode's going to be a little bit different because, full transparency, usually I lock up the episode Friday afternoon to release on Saturday morning on the audio-only platform, so all the topics and everything we discuss for the following week are done on the previous Friday. That being said, this week, I had to lock the podcast Wednesday afternoon/evening because I will be traveling Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday. So I will be away and won't be able to talk about anything that happens or won't be able to record anything at the very least during that time period. So what that means, practically speaking, is that we actually will not be able to get to Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 1 because that comes out on Thursday, and I will not have seen it by the time that this podcast has been recorded and edited. But do not fear, next week, episode 93 of the Access Blockbusters Pod, we will definitely be talking about Peacemaker Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2. I believe those are the two episodes that will be out in the first couple of weeks. Another exciting announcement before we get into all the usual mumbo-jumbo about subscribing and whatnot. Another exciting announcement. This is sort of out of the blue. This kind of happened randomly, but I thought I'd do it. I have actually edited, recorded, and locked and loaded an edited video. For those of you who don't know, those of you who haven't been on the channel for a while, I used to only do edited videos, meaning video clips and scripted, not scripted, but more just edited content and audio and things like that with video clips and whatnot. These days, right, we post the full podcast episodes every week and then do the clips with some images behind them throughout the rest of the week as well. But I decided to make a full edited video on one of my, if not my favorite film of all time. And that video will be releasing Friday, I believe August 29th as of today. So don't quote me on that if that changes. But I am very excited about this. And if you guys could check out that video when it comes out, I'll be making some more announcements about it on the channel as the week goes on. I would really appreciate that. I am super excited to share this video with you guys. It's something that's been on my mind. I thought, I could just do a segment about this on the podcast and then move on. But I thought, if I'm going to be talking about my favorite movie, I feel like it deserves a video. So I decided to make a full-on video about that, not just a podcast segment. So it will not be included in this week's podcast episode, but stay tuned on the channel for that. Okay. This intro is getting very long, but I have to go through all the usual mumbo-jumbo. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers, and hoping to get there by the end of 2025. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Give this video a like. And if you want to listen to the audio-only platforms, this week, actually, the video version of the podcast, the full podcast, might come out on the same day as the audio-only version, but the audio-only version usually comes out first Saturday mornings U.S. time on Apple Podcast, Overcast, and Spotify, so go ahead and check it out there. That is it for the longest intro of all time. I apologize for that. Lots of exciting stuff to talk about. Let's get into today's topics. Alrighty, guys, the Spider-Man Brand New Day casting and rumor mill continues to churn. Now, in this segment, if you're watching or listening to the podcast, you may not have seen exactly what we're talking about here if you're going through the entire podcast. So this might come as a surprise to you, but we are not talking about that rumor that's going around right now, at least of the recording of this video and this podcast. We are not talking about the rumors, and I'm going to call it a rumor. I'm calling it a rumor, even though some people want to say that it's a confirmed story, that Yelena Belova is going to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day. As of the recording of this video, who knows? By the time this podcast and this segment are up and live, perhaps that's been confirmed. But I just want to say up front, we are not talking about that casting rumor because that is a rumor. It's coming from a scooper who, yes, has been accurate before in the past, but I am not ready to call it news unless it comes from one of the major sources, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, or from Marvel or Sony themselves. So just want to put that out there. We are not going to be talking about the Yelena rumor until that happens. No, today we are talking about, speaking of being confirmed by one of the major sources, an actor who has been confirmed by one of the major sources to be joining the cast, the ever-growing cast of Spider-Man Brand New Day. And it's a face that he's been getting some more work in Hollywood ever since his star turn in the show Severance, and that is Tremel Tillman. I think that's how you pronounce it. Tremel Tillman has joined the cast of Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, if the name Tremel Tillman doesn't ring a bell, then I think the name Mr. Seth Milchick will definitely ring some bells for those of you who are listening, because Mr. Seth Milchick is one of the most interesting, I will say, characters in the show Severance. He is part of Lumen, and we're obviously not here to talk about Severance, but I think Tremel Tillman does a great job in Severance of just playing this weird corporate man who always has a smile on his face and is towing the corporate line, but there's some frustration and anger brewing within him. He is such an interesting character, and I mean, Tillman does such a good job of embodying that particular character that it's really hard to see him outside of that role. And we'll talk about him and his potential role in Spider-Man Brand New Day. But let's read from this Variety article here about the casting. So it says, quote, details on Tillman's character in the web-slinging adventure remain under wraps, but he'll join Tom Holland's Spider-Man, Zendaya's MJ Jones Watson. I think it's just MJ Watson because Michelle Jones Watson. Anyways, minor nitpick. Jacob Batalon's Ned Leeds, John Bernthal's Punisher, and Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, plus additional cast members Sadie Sink and Liza Colon Zayas, she's from The Bear, in mysterious new roles. So the funny thing about this, right, is that he recently popped up in another big blockbuster in the past couple months, that being Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. And it's funny because I had totally forgotten he was going to be in that movie, until he showed up in the submarine, I think. And I was like, oh, Mr. Milchek. And I was like, okay, let's see if he can, if he distinguishes himself enough from that character. And it's funny because I knew people who watched the movie and said, oh, wow, he was really good in the movie. And I was like, yeah, he was really good. But for me, it's funny because I just could not distinguish some of the mannerisms from Milchek to Tramel's performance in Mission Impossible. I don't know why. Might just be my problem. Might just be that his performance in Severance imprinted so hard on my brain that I just can't get it out of my head. So I think it's funny because, I mean, at the end of the day, this is talent, right? Tramel Tillman has received Emmy nominations for his role in Severance. He's great in the role. He's a great actor. And to have him join the cast of Spider-Man Brand New Day, who knows who he'll be? Is he going to be a villain? Is he going to be an ally to Spider-Man? I don't know. No idea. But I think that really at the end of the day, the really encouraging thing about this, because we don't talk about every single casting announcement for every single movie and every single show. We would just be here all day, right? Oh, X unknown actor to me, is cast in X movie. Okay, that's great. The only reason I'm talking about this is because Tillman, I think, is a rising actor who has been getting a lot more notoriety ever since Severance, and I think well-deserved. And I'm really excited to see him appear in Spider-Man Brand New Day. I have no idea who he's going to be playing, but I can only imagine that whoever he's going to be playing is going to make a mark on the movie in some form or fashion. So guys, do you have any thoughts? Do you have any potential guesses? I have no idea who he might be playing, but any thoughts on the fact that Tramel Tillman is apparently, Mr. Milchek himself, is apparently going to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, we did a segment where we ranked every single MCU upcoming project by anticipation, so it only seems fair that we do the same for the DCU. So let's do that. I mean, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in. Let's rank the DCU upcoming projects by anticipation. However, I have to give a big caveat here. We are not going to be ranking every single DCU project that's been confirmed to be in some kind of production, because there are a lot of DCU projects, movies or shows, that have, yes, been technically confirmed to be in production, meaning they were announced, and some of them even have directors and writers attached to them. That being said, some of them seem like they're so far away that we just don't know anything about them. In fact, some of them might even be canceled. We got confirmation a while ago that James Gunn actually canceled one of the upcoming DCU projects that he had announced at one point. He didn't say which one, so we don't know. We can only speculate on that. But he's canceled one of them because he just wasn't happy with the script, and that's fine. That is what it is. But the fact remains that as I was making this list, as I was compiling every single upcoming DCU project here, I just looked at the list and went, basically every single one in the bottom half, the bottom 5 or 6, and we'll kind of talk, I'm not going to list every single one, but we're going to kind of talk through the kinds of projects we're not going to discuss today. I was like, I don't know what to say about it other than, yeah, I'm curious, but I don't know what to expect. So projects like The Authority, projects like Waller, projects like Booster Gold, we don't know anything about these projects, and so they're not going to be on this list. And you guys can argue with me in the comments below. That's totally fine. I can paste in a list, in the comments if you want the full list at some point. But again, it's just, I don't know what else to say about those projects except I guess I'm excited about it, but I don't know anything else. So we'll have to see. So anyways, this list is only going to comprise 6 projects, which you might be like, that's crazy. Why didn't you include more projects? Fair, totally fair. But I'm only including 6 projects here that I believe are substantively in some kind of development. And you guys can argue with me with a couple of these inclusions, but these are the 6 projects that I thought would just be interesting to talk about, honestly. And again, are in some kind of substantive level of production. We could, talk about Creature Commandos Season 2. We could talk about Swamp Thing, which we haven't heard anything about, and it doesn't look like that's coming out for 6 years. We haven't heard anything about Booster Gold, Teen Titans, The Authority, Sergeant Rock, Bane and Deathstroke, Mr. Miracle. There are so many of these DCU projects that if I put on the list, I'd be like, I don't know. And it's one thing to be like that and say, yeah, it's coming out in 5 years and I have no idea to talk about. Because it's not like the MCU, for example, where, in 5 years you're getting Avengers Kang Dynasty and you're like, okay, I can kind of see what's being set up there. Or in 5 years you're getting Shang-Chi too, based on an original property. This is just, I'm taking shots at the dark here. So 6 projects here to talk about ranking from least excited to most excited. But I'm excited for pretty much all of these, to be fair. So number 6 on this list is Wonder Woman. And again, you might be saying, why is Wonder Woman on this list and some other projects aren't? Because Wonder Woman is kind of barely in development. Fair. It has a script, though. It has a finished script. It has a writer, Anna Noguera, who is the writer for Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And really, I think that's what is hindering my excitement, because I just don't know what Supergirl is going to turn into. If Supergirl is a disaster, and I hope it's not, I really hope it's not, but if it's a disaster, then I'm not going to be very excited for Wonder Woman, right? I don't think a lot of us are going to be. And that's just, what is going to happen because of expectations, right? If Supergirl is amazing, though, well, then I think we're all going to be pretty excited for Wonder Woman. So it's just sort of and it also depends on who they're going to cast. I mean, Adria Arjona is the fan casting, but fan castings don't always turn out to be the right castings, right? John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. I think we all were kind of clamoring for that. And based on the Fantastic Four movie that we got, I personally don't think John Krasinski would have been the best choice for that. You guys can disagree with me in the comments, but I personally don't think so. So sometimes the fan casting is not the right casting. And so we'll have to see with this Wonder Woman reboot. Number 5, Super Family. Again, you can argue with me. This movie doesn't have a script. This movie doesn't even have a cast. James Gunn is writing it, and it is pretty much confirmed to be happening. And it looks like it's going to be one of the next projects up in the DCU slate. So Super Family, whatever this is, again, very similar logic to Wonder Woman. Supergirl, whatever happens with Supergirl, if it's really good, I'm going to be super excited for Super Family, because I'm assuming it's a Superman, Supergirl team-up movie, so that's exciting. If Supergirl is pretty bad, well, then this movie is going to move a lot lower into the ranking. So Super Family is at number 5. Number 4, Batman, Brave and the Bold. I don't know what to make of this movie, to be frank. I personally am a fan of the darker Matt Reeves sort of Batman universe kind of Batman, and even the Christopher Nolan relatively dark, but even still lighter than the Batman universe, Batman kind of movies. I don't know if this is going to be a goofier Batman movie, which again can work, but when you're introducing the Bat family, when you're introducing Damian Wayne and Robin, and I don't know, the only context I've seen Damian Wayne in is Harley Quinn, and that's obviously a comedy. So I don't know what to make of this movie. Also, it's kind of going through some production troubles, I think, with the script and whatnot. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of this kind of iteration of Batman. Again, the casting is going to have everything to do with it, and we will see from there. Do you guys kind of see what I'm saying, though? It's like if I said something about Swamp Thing, it's like, yeah, I like James Mangold, but I don't know who's going to be Swamp Thing. And so anyways, and also we don't know when Swamp Thing is going to happen. So there is that. Number 3, Clayface. I will admit, Clayface is not the kind of movie that I would usually be excited for. It's a horror movie. It's a body horror movie. And while I respect very much the quality of filmmaking for The Substance, the movie that came out last year, the Oscar-nominated movie, hated the watching experience because it's just not for me. It's just not the kind of medium for me. That being said, you got the right people for it. Mike Flanagan is a horror legend in the movie industry space, and it looks like the movie knows what it's going to be. I think Tom Rhys-Harries has been cast as Clayface. We know that. And I think that there's something very interesting that they could do here with the character of shapeshifting and body dysmorphia, kind of tackling those kinds of themes. So I think that Clayface is something where I'm very curious about. Very, very curious about. Number 2 is Supergirl. I think Supergirl has all the makings to be a very fun space opera, sci-fi adventure, in the vein of I don't know what in the vein of what, but I think it's going to be irreverent. I mean, you saw, spoiler alert, at the end of Superman, you saw who the kind of character that Supergirl is going to be, so that's exciting to see. What that could turn into, but also I just think Millie Alcock is a great actress, and I think that they have a lot of confidence in this movie. And if they have confidence in the movie, I think I get more excited about that. So there's number 2, Supergirl. Number 1, Lanterns. I think out of all the projects coming up, Lantern seems like the most slam dunk. First of all, it is being treated like an HBO proper series. And HBO series tend not to miss. They tend to be really the paragon of quality in terms of TV shows these days. And on top of that, Jon Stewart, great. You got a great casting choice for Jon Stewart with Aaron Pierre. Kyle Chandler looks like a great Hal Jordan. That's awesome. Guy Gardner is going to show up again. I don't know what Nathan Fillion's going to do there, but I love the idea of a true detective crime thriller set on Earth, just in the setting of lanterns. I love when science fiction can take really grounded and normal and human stories and just add in a sprinkle of science fiction. I'm not saying that, the Green Lanterns are not going to have space adventures and they're not going to show off their powers with the rings and whatnot. But I'm just saying that I love the idea that it's still grounded in this detective story, which I think is going to be really, really exciting. So I am very, 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 very excited for Lanterns. And guys, those are the 6 projects that I have listed here upcoming in the DCU. Again, acknowledge that we could have talked about Swamp Thing, we could have talked about Sergeant Rock and Bane and Deathstroke and Teen Titans and the animated Blue Beetle series. We just don't know anything about them. There's just, to be fair, I could have listed all 10 of those projects at the bottom 10 of this ranking and just said, I don't know. Maybe. So again, you guys can argue with me in the comments and let me know that you guys have been waiting for a Booster Gold series for your entire life. And if so, I'm excited for you guys. And I hope that series turns out to be everything that you guys were hoping for. So anyways, let me know what your ranking of these 6 projects would be. And if you want to include any of the other ones, go for it. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, it feels like day by day we're getting a little bit closer, ever so slightly closer to understanding what this next James Gunn DCU project is going to be. We don't know what it's going to be called officially. We know basically everything it's not going to be called, but kind of what it is, because we've talked about this before. James Gunn, there's a whole timeline about this now. It feels like every week we're learning a little bit more about this project. And originally, we heard that James Gunn was writing a project that was going to be Superman related, or Superman was going to have a very important role, which is exciting based on Superman, the movie that came out this year. And then we heard about the fact that it was going to be a sequel of some sort, a follow-up, if you will. And then we talked about recently that David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers, came out and said it's going to be a super family movie. Not, again, I've just to clarify, super family meaning not super family friendly, but super family, like the Superman family of characters, I guess, if you will. And now we've gotten yet another frustratingly small piece of that puzzle, because James Gunn was doing an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, and he's actually pretty far along in development of this project. So hold your horses. We may not be getting Swamp Thing or The Authority ever, but we will be getting the 4th James Gunn DCU project before any of that happens, including, Creature Commando Season 1, Superman, Peacemaker Season 2, and then now this follow-up movie, because he's calling it a part of the Superman saga. So that doesn't really tell us anything, and that's not, that is the headline of this segment, I suppose, but it's really, the interesting thing is more of the timeline. So doing the interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he says, quote, he says he's already finished the treatment for, quote, the next story in what I'll call the Superman saga. So hold your horses. Again, it's not like Kevin Feige getting on stage and saying, this is the multiverse saga graphic. I think maybe James Gunn will do the exact same thing and call it the Superman saga within the DCU, within Gods and Monsters, the first chapter of the DCU. I think really it's more of just him saying, yeah, that's what I'll call it. It's more of a colloquial, casual term more than anything else. But we'll see. Maybe he'll, again, maybe at Comic-Con next year, he'll get on stage and be like, this is the Superman saga, and it has Superman 1, it has Super Family, Superman 2, Supergirl 3. I would think he would consider Supergirl a part of that Superman saga. So this is probably going to be the 3rd film in that Superman saga. But he says, quote, the treatment is done, which means a very, very worked out treatment. I'm working on that and hopefully going into production on that not too far away from today. So again, and he said, I think he says later on at a certain point that he has a full treatment, which means that he's going to start writing the full script soon, because the treatment is not the script. The treatment, I think, is more of the story outline and the character arcs and things like that, and then he'll just go into writing the script, which is what I think he was alluding to a while ago when he said he was pre-writing his next DCU film. But what he says here, though, is interesting. He's going into production on this very, very soon. So really what we've seen thus far, because James Gunn, right, unlike Kevin Feige is not a filmmaker, Kevin Feige is not a director, Kevin Feige is not a writer. He is a film producer. And he's also the president of Marvel Studios. James Gunn is the co-CEO of DC Studios, yet he is also a writer-director himself. And the sense that I'm getting thus far, again, you can comment down below, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing for the DCU? You tell me. But James Gunn, the sense that I'm getting is, James Gunn, at a certain point in all of his project's development, or the DCU's development, is basically saying, you know what, if no one else is going to do it, then I'll just do it myself. Because look, I mean, he's the one in charge of approving and rejecting scripts, right? Because he's been saying, the DCU films, the DCU projects, the DCU shows and movies are not going to go forward unless I like the script. Well, I mean, cynically speaking, is James Gunn ever not going to like his own scripts? I mean, when it gets to a point where it's finished, right? Obviously, in the middle of it, who knows? But is James Gunn ever not going to like his own scripts? At a certain point, he's just going to make whatever he wants to make. And that's why you run into these things of, we're going to get a fourth James Gunn DCU project probably before Booster Gold, probably before The Authority, probably before Waller, probably before Swamp Thing, probably before Paradise Lost. So it is what it is, right? I've half jokingly said this first year, 2025, is the James Gunn cinematic universe and not really the DC cinematic, DC universe, whatever you're going to call it. And so I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. I'm interested to see if it's going to be a Superman, Supergirl team up, which we speculated before. But the Superman saga is going to be continuing much sooner than we think. Maybe, again, we've talked about this. If he's writing the movie now, maybe 2028 isn't that unrealistic. Maybe even late 2027. We'll have to see about that. So, guys, what do you think about this? The Superman saga. What do you think this movie is going to be? When do you think it's going to come out? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys. Is the Blade MCU movie in trouble? Well, I mean, that feels like an old question. It feels like a question we've been asking ourselves since the beginning of time, since the beginning of the MCU. But no, I feel like we have to keep asking ourselves this question because new details keep showing up. And an interesting thing just happened, a new development, if you will, that seems to add fuel to the fire that this Blade movie is in more trouble than we think, and that there might be a distinct possibility that Mahershala Ali is done as Blade. Or is there? Because there are a couple ways to look at what we're going to talk about today. That Mahershala Ali has been recast as Blade, which is the headline. That being said, it's not as simple as you would think. He has not been, first of all, to be clear, he's not been recast in his own Blade movie. His own Blade movie has still been, Kevin Feige has still been adamant that they are in production of this movie. However, there are other MCU projects where Blade is going to appear. Notably, what we're going to be talking about today is Marvel Zombies. Now, Marvel Zombies is spawning from an episode. I mean, first of all, it's inspired by a comic book run, Marvel Zombies, where it's exactly what it sounds like, Marvel Zombies. And there was a What If episode in season 1 where they did this concept, What If Zombies, and I guess they're deciding to make an entire series about it. Personally, not a big fan of this idea. I don't know why you're devoting resources to this. That being said, I said the exact same thing about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I loved Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So I don't know. Maybe Marvel Zombies will be my favorite MCU project ever made. Not if it is, I'll eat my words. So there's that. That's sort of the mindset I'm going into this project with. But anyways, we just got confirmation that Mahershala Ali, who I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if he was originally supposed to voice Blade. And interestingly enough, it's not going to be Blade in this series as traditionally seen. It's going to be a Blade Moon Knight hybrid, which is very interesting. It's going to be Eric Brooks, who is the alter ego of Blade as Moon Knight, which is, again, very interesting thing. So I don't know what the situation was, whether or not they were going to actually have Mahershala Ali do the role, if he actually was going to voice the role and then he backed out, or if people just assume that, because I feel like I have a memory of hearing the announcement a while ago that Mahershala Ali was going to be in the show as Blade, and then he backed out. If that's the case, that doesn't bode super well for this project, or not just this project, that doesn't bode super well, for his own Blade movie, because we've just been getting cold water poured on this from everywhere except Marvel Studios themselves, who obviously have an incentive to make us believe that this Blade movie is happening, because they want us to get excited about it. And Kevin Feige's been like, nope, we're still working on it. It's taking place in present day now. We're going to get it right. Okay, well then we get this news that Blade is going to be voiced not by Mahershala Ali in Marvel Zombies, but by Todd Williams, an actor who, interestingly, has replaced Mahershala Ali before in a voice role in Invincible. He obviously, that's not Blade, but he replaced Mahershala Ali as a voice double before in the show, the animated show Invincible. So, what does this mean? Does this mean anything for Blade? Well, on the one hand, right, you can take this as a bad sign that Marvel Zombies, which one would assume Todd Williams, because Marvel Zombies is releasing in a couple months, I think, and one would assume that Todd Williams finished up his role a while ago, many months ago, and by that point it was clear that Mahershala Ali wasn't going to be in the project. So who knows, right? Maybe at that point he backed out and he was like, I don't see a future in the MCU. I'm done. I'm not playing Blade anymore. So that's one side of it, where we should maybe be a little bit concerned that, again, we haven't had many positive things to go off of in terms of Blade in the past couple years, but maybe this is really the final nail in the coffin. On the flip side, though, look at What If. Look at all the animated shows that Marvel does with their main cast of characters. Just because Tom Holland doesn't voice Spider-Man in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man or What If, just because Robert Downey Jr. doesn't voice Iron Man or Scarlett Johansson doesn't voice Black Widow, does that mean they don't care about their characters and they're not going to reprise their roles in the case of Spider-Man, in the case of Tom Holland? No, of course not. It means they're busy. It means they have other things to do. It means contractual things. It means all sorts of things in Tom Holland's case. It means all sorts of things for Robert Downey Jr.'s case. It doesn't mean that they don't want to be a part of the MCU. Obviously, Robert Downey Jr. is back. Scarlett Johansson just had her run with Black Widow, and Tom Holland is continuing to make Spider-Man movies. It doesn't mean that they're not on good terms with Marvel. So just because Mahershala Ali doesn't do Marvel Zombies and is replaced by a different voice actor who's replaced him before, right? So it's not even like a recasting or anything like that in terms of, oh, is this new person going to be Marvel's next Blade instead of Mahershala Ali? This guy has replaced him as a voice actor before in Invincible. So again, I mean, I want to say that it doesn't add anything positive to the picture about Blade because, yeah, I mean, it doesn't look great that Mahershala Ali isn't voicing the role of Blade anymore, if he even was in the first place. Again, though, want to caution that while it doesn't necessarily add anything good to the picture, it may not also add anything negative either, because perhaps, again, he just had a scheduling conflict, or perhaps he was never going to do this at all in the first place. So I think it's important to take all those sides of the argument into consideration when we're looking at this, and just say that Blade is still in limbo, and we may not get any news about this for a long while, until post-Secret Wars even, but until then, we're just going to have to consider Blade sort of in limbo and purgatory kind of project until further notice. So guys, that is an update on Blade. He has been recast, interestingly, in Marvel Zombies. Does that mean anything bad for the character in his solo movie? I don't know. We'll have to see. Guys, what do you think of the fact that Mahershala Ali is not going to be voicing Blade/Moon Knight, I guess, in Marvel Zombies? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, the movie news space, some days it feels like it's out to get me. Not really, that's a very arrogant and selfish thing to say. No, I mean, I'm just joking, because oftentimes, I feel like especially more recently, movie news has come out just as I've locked the previous episode of the podcast. So if I'd waited maybe a couple hours, I would have been able to include breaking news that comes out on Fridays. For those of you who don't know, I lock the podcast episodes on Fridays because it helps me stay sane and healthy while I'm uploading videos every single day to the YouTube channel and doing weekly podcasts. But what that does is that at a certain point, I have to say the episode's locked and we're not going to think about it. And lo and behold, after that happens, news comes out that basically confirms stuff that we're going to talk about in the next episode. So it's a little awkward sometimes, the timing, but you know what? We're here to talk about it even if it's a week late. So in last week's episode of the Access Blockbusters pod, we talked about the fact that Ryan Reynolds was teasing a return to the MCU in Avengers Doomsday, most likely because of his character, Deadpool obviously wanting to be in the MCU, but also the fact that, well, you know, he posted an Avengers logo on his Instagram page with the A symbol, the anarchy symbol that the character of Deadpool had been using throughout his time in Deadpool and Wolverine, or I think it was a production gift or something like that. Anyways, we've seen them wearing the hat before with that logo. So, anyways, he posts that, and we're all doing our segments and we're all talking about it. Is Ryan Reynolds going to be in Avengers Doomsday? You know, I don't know, maybe. And lo and behold, The Hollywood Reporter decides to drop a little tiny nugget that confirms this, basically. Now, normally, before we get into this, I say The Hollywood Reporter is a very, very, very reliable source, along with Deadline, along with Variety, along with The Wrap. Lots of really reliable sources that when they report something, it is all but set in stone. That being said, this isn't a breaking news article, because those breaking news articles are usually highly vetted and basically confirmed. This is a newsletter that I think they do called Heat Vision. And in their latest article, it's literally a sentence. I'm just going to read it to you. It says this, quote, "Sources tell Heat Vision that yes, Deadpool will appear in Avengers Doomsday, parentheses, don't expect him to actually be joining the Avengers team, though." And that is it. That is literally the only line. So, I mean, it's hard because, yes, I mean, you want to believe that the Hollywood Reporter sources are the same and whatnot. It's one line dropped into this article, and it's nothing else is talked about it after that. So is this actual confirmation that Ryan Reynolds, and again, confirmation in the sense of the major trades are reporting this, right? Not actually Marvel coming out and saying this. which we're all kind of thinking and hoping and assuming that there's going to be a part 2 cast announcement for Avengers Doomsday sometime soon. So all this stuff about Spider-Man and all this stuff about Deadpool and America Chavez and all these other characters will probably be revealed in the near future, we're hoping. But in the meantime, is this official confirmation that Ryan Reynolds is going to be, as Deadpool, is going to be in Avengers Doomsday? Maybe? I honestly, again, I trust these sources, but I don't feel any more or less confident that this is going to happen than I did a week ago when we talked about this with the Ryan Reynolds Instagram tease. I mean, sure, maybe if they had said, sources tell us that Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool is going to be in Avengers Doomsday, and he's going to be a multiversal variant that wears a white suit, and he's going to be teaming up with Professor X and Wolverine, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Maybe then I'd be like, okay, interesting, because nobody else has been saying this. When it's saying something that I think we all just kind of assumed, I'm more hesitant to say anything else, because I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. So honestly, I don't know what to make of this. I mean, we're doing this segment because I guess sources have confirmed that Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool is coming back for Avengers Doomsday, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. So guys, do you feel any more certain with this one paragraph from the Hollywood Reporter that Deadpool is going to be in Avengers Doomsday? Honestly, I was probably at a 90% before anyways, and maybe I'm at a 90.5% now. So I don't know. Maybe. Seems likely, I guess. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, it's funny because we keep talking about Avengers Doomsday, and we keep talking about Avengers Doomsday uncertainties. Oh, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. The funny thing about Avengers Doomsday, it makes sense because the movie is over a year and a half away, or it's about a year and a half away, I should say. So, yeah, I mean, we're not going to know that much. And really, the only thing we know about this movie is the cast, and Robert Downey Jr. is coming back as Dr. Doom, and we've gotten little hints here and there from actual Marvel sources, being Kevin Feige, for example, and I think Matt Shakman, or some of the cast of the Fantastic Four revealed that there's going to be some scenes in the Baxter buildings. There's been some leaked set photos. Other than that, we don't know anything. I mean, of course, there are the usual scoopers and leakers and people saying all these kinds of things. There's so many rumors about so many different Marvel movies and DC movies. It just, I try to tune those out. I hear what people are saying, but I try to tune those out as actual confirmation. But today, we actually have, interestingly enough, a concrete detail about one of the main characters, it looks like, of Avengers Doomsday. And that is Vanessa Kirby's Sue Storm. Now, Vanessa Kirby's Sue Storm was essentially, I would argue, that the main character of Fantastic Four First Steps, out of the four of them. I think that she really had the most pivotal, emotional role in that movie. And I thought she did a great job. Vanessa Kirby was awesome in Fantastic Four First Steps. So it makes sense. And this is going to be a spoiler warning for the end credits of, or the mid credits rather, of Fantastic Four First Steps. So if you haven't seen that, then I'd recommend maybe jumping ahead a little bit in the podcast. But at the end of Fantastic Four First Steps, right, we see Franklin Richards, who is now 4 years old, being confronted by Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom. Franklin Richards being touted by Galactus as one of the most powerful beings in the entire known universe, multiverse, ? And so it makes sense that Dr. Doom is going after him. And so it looks like Vanessa Kirby Sue Storm, in that way, is also going to have a very pivotal role because Dr. Doom is going after Franklin Richards as well. And so now talking about Avengers Doomsday, she actually had this to say about what her role is going to be. And I think that this is fascinating because it's not something that I had even thought about before for her character, but I love that they're doing this. I love that they're diving into this. So she said, quote, "I've been thinking a lot doing Avengers and stuff about how someone that's been through in the space of basically a week, someone who has given birth and has died and come back, how a death experience like that would change you." And then she adds to that quote here, and I'm going to read just the second part here. She says, quote, "I've been listening to a lot of people that have had those kinds of experiences and what they learn, and therefore how different they are after they come back from that." So she doesn't explicitly say Sue Storm's character arc in Avengers Doomsday is that she comes back to life and has trauma about it. She doesn't explicitly say that. But the subtext here is pretty easy to read, right? That is a major part, it looks like, of what Sue Storm is going through in Doomsday. The fact that she died and came back to life. Now, granted, this is 4 years later after Fantastic Four First Steps, so this must have been majorly traumatic for the character in order for her to still be thinking about that. But still, I really like this because I think that it shows Doomsday is not just going to be this mad, chaotic action movie about Dr. Doom and spectacle and whatnot. It shows that there actually is going to be some character development for these characters, even though there's 50 billion of them in this movie. I love that they're actually taking the time to dive into this for Sue Storm. This piece of news, oddly enough, encourages me more about Doomsday than any of the other casting announcements of, oh, Hugh Jackman's going to be joining Doomsday. That's not confirmed, by the way, just me throwing out a hypothetical. But, oh, Hugh Jackman's coming back as Wolverine, and, oh, Magneto's coming back, and Professor X, and Nightcrawler, and whatnot. I almost said Nightwing. Nightcrawler. I think this news, because you know me, for those of you who have been listening or watching the channel for a while, you know me. Character and story are so important. Doesn't matter the spectacle or the visuals or the action. I mean, those things are awesome. But to me, the character work and really diving into what makes characters tick, that's what made Fantastic Four First Step so well done for me, is that even characters like Galactus and Silver Surfer have little character arcs in there that take those characters from generic villains to something more. I love it. And I love that they're really taking the time to do this for Sue Storm as well. I think that this is a very good sign for Avengers Doomsday. Now, who knows, right? This might just be a throwaway line, and Vanessa Kirby took that throwaway line and she's really diving into that for her own research and her own character development, and it might just be one cutscene in a deleted scene in a movie. I don't know. But still, the fact that this is happening, the fact that this is something that she's thinking about, actually, again, gives me a lot of hope for Doomsday. So, anyways, I thought that this was an interesting tidbit because, like I said, we haven't really gotten a whole lot about anything in Avengers Doomsday, and this is one very concrete piece of news that we have gotten. So, guys, what do you think about this? That Vanessa Kirby has said that her character, she's hinted at least, that her character is going to be grappling with the ramifications of her coming back to life after the end of Fantastic Four First Steps. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, everybody, the Lord of the Rings spin-off film, The Hunt for Gollum. We're not talking about the Rings of Power here. We're talking about the new feature film that I think is going to be directed, if not directed, produced and written by Peter Jackson, who did, of course, the original 3 Lord of the Rings films, some of the greatest movies of all time, as well as the Hobbit films, which a lot of people dislike, and I get it. It definitely did not need to be 3 movies, that's for sure. But I personally get a lot of enjoyment out of those 3 Hobbit films. Maybe that's a hot take. I've done a couple videos about that on the channel. But anyways, I digress. We're going to talk about the, I think, 2026 film, or 2027 film. It's coming out in the next couple of years. The Hunt for Gollum. Now, very little is known about this. And actually, now that I say this, the film is going to be executive produced by Peter Jackson, but it's going to be directed by none other than Gollum himself, Andy Serkis, and obviously starring Andy Serkis himself. We've gotten hints and basic confirmations, essentially confirmations from Ian McKellen in the past saying that Gandalf might be appearing, who knows. And now it looks like we have official confirmation, which is interesting, right? Because we don't know much about the story of this movie at all, but given who's in the movie, I think we have a pretty good idea now of where this movie is going to take place and what's going to happen in it, I think, at least. So let's dive into this here. Ian McKellen was doing, I think he was at some kind of fan expo, and he had this to say about The Hunt for Gollum. He said, quote, "I hear there's going to be another movie based in Middle-earth, and it's going to start filming in May, so that's exciting. It's going to be directed by Gollum, and it's all about Gollum. Gollum obviously being Andy Serkis." And then he had this to say. This is obviously the really interesting part. Quote, "I'll tell you 2 secrets about the casting. There's a character in the movie called Frodo, and there's a character in the movie called Gandalf." So that's obviously the bombshell. And of course it had to be some kind of choreographed announcement, right? That if he says it like that, it's, maybe he's just leaking information, maybe he doesn't care, he's in his mid-80s, he's filming Avengers Doomsday. He's kind of, again, not to be morbid, but sort of the last hurrah for Ian McKellen in the comic book and pop culture movie space, and he's coming back as Gandalf, he's coming back as Magneto, all exciting stuff. And so maybe it was just a leak, but I have to imagine that it was somehow choreographed, that he was going to say it at that point in time, he was going to announce it. So here's the thing about this, right? I mean, first of all, great. Frodo and Gandalf are going to be in this movie, because I think based on everything we've heard, obviously, unless Lord of the Rings decides to do something crazy, it's not going to take place post Return of the Jedi, Return of the King, because Gollum is dead. Spoiler alert for a movie and a book franchise that is decades old at this point. Gollum is dead. So this is going to be a prequel, right? We know that. And The Hunt for Gollum, there's a very particular space in these movies where this should probably take place. It's the point in time when Gandalf leaves the Shire at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. He goes out looking for Gollum. He finds him, and that's really what kickstarts the entire sequence of events in the Lord of the Rings, is that he finds Gollum and kind of interrogates him, right? And so that is presumably what this story is going to be, that little time period at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. And so it makes sense, right? It makes sense that Gandalf is probably going to be in this movie. Not only in this movie, one would have to imagine he's going to be a main character in the movie. Again, not to say that Ian McKellen can't do that, and of course there's de-aging technology, and I'm not just saying that because Ian McKellen's 86. I mean, they de-aged Alfred Molina to play Doc Ock, and obviously that's to make him look more in line with his appearance in Spider-Man 2, but of course it's the same thing here with Ian McKellen as Gandalf, so that's all well and good. Now to get to the Frodo part, right, what would Frodo be doing in this movie? Well, you have to remember, and this is my suspicion as of now, nobody's confirmed this as of yet, but Elijah Wood, right? I mean, one could have said the same thing when talking about The Hobbit, right? If, for example, Martin Freeman, who plays Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit, could have gotten on stage when they were making those movies, when they were about to film those movies, and said, oh, you know, I have a secret to tell you guys. There's a little character in this movie called Frodo. And he could have left it there, and people would have been like, what? What does that mean? Turns out all that would have meant, for those of you who have seen The Hobbit and Unexpected Journey, for what that would have meant, essentially, is a cameo at the beginning of the movie to set up the framing device of how Bilbo is telling the story. They got Ian Holm back as well to, again, set up the story at the very beginning, and Elijah Wood shows up. That's all it meant, and that's fine. So maybe they're just going to bring back Elijah Wood to recreate the framing device of this story, where Gandalf, leaves the Shire, says goodbye to Frodo, and then goes off on his adventure, which is the entire movie. And then he comes back to Frodo, and he's like, you got to go, you got to leave. The Nazgul are coming after you. That's my guess at this point. I can't imagine Frodo has any part to play substantively in this movie, just because of the fact that if this movie is where we think it is in terms of the timeline, then it's just going to be, I mean, Frodo can't be involved. He's going to be in the Shire the whole time. And we know what Frodo's doing the entirety of the time that they're hunting for Gollum. So, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of interesting that he's like, yep, Frodo's coming back. I would imagine it's another little cameo that Elijah Wood is going to be making. And that's fine. It's great. I don't know why we needed to announce that here. But maybe get some excitement going around the movie. I don't know. It's fine. I'm excited about that. And I think Gandalf coming back in the movie makes a lot of sense as well. So, guys, what do you think of the confirmation that Gandalf and Frodo, Ian McKellen, and presumably Elijah Wood are coming back for The Hunt for Gollum, directed by Andy Serkis and produced by Peter Jackson? Let me know in the comments down below. And everybody, that will do it for episode number 91 of the Access Blockbusters pod. Thank you so much for joining us again every single week. Road to 2,000 subscribers. We are on our way. It is an exciting time here on the YouTube channel and on the podcast feed. So if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Give this video a like and comment down below with your thoughts on any of the topics. And if you are interested in the audio-only platforms, make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast as well. That will do it for me from the Access Blockbusters pod, episode 91, and I will see you guys in the next one.